Shukran, Jibril. Gilad, I call you first to order, and second, I invite you to the podium, please.
Well, I didn't realize that it's the first time you speak in front of an Israeli audience in the university, but if it's up to me, it's not the last time. I can assure you that. And one more issue is the heading of the National Palestinian Soccer Federation by Jibril for the last couple of years. Epi, did you know that? It's important.
Yeah, I was aware of it.
It's quite important.
But for some reason, I didn't think that this is paramount on his biographical history.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first time I met Jibril was 17 years ago. It was in early 1995 when we both negotiated the Oslo Interim Agreement. And since then, we've met each other many times in official, unofficial capacities. Similarly, our fellow negotiators spent years negotiating the intertwined core issues of Jerusalem, the holy sites, the refugees, the borders, territory, settlements, security, water, whatever. And I believe that we all know, more or less, what a final agreement will look like ultimately. Its contour is clear. Towards the end of December 2000, President Clinton laid down his parameters. It was 11 years ago. And since then, every political initiative to ending the conflict and get to the finality of the claims has led broadly to very, very similar fundamental solutions. Take a look, for instance, at the Olmert-Abu Mazen set of understandings of 2008. They were almost identical to the Clinton parameters. Even for Jerusalem, they have found a solution, a special regime in the old city. Nonetheless, an agreement remains elusive. It is disheartening, I believe, but it should focus our energies. So let us assume, for the sake of this conference, that there is still willingness to end the conflict at both parties. For quite some time now, neither leadership can figure out how to garner sufficient support domestically for an agreement reached. And I attach a lot of importance to public statements made not only to your own constituency, but also to the other party, to what each side needs to hear from the other in order to be able to sell the compromise. In marketing terms, it means that the marketing strategy of both sides needs to be coordinated between them, and that such coordination may be as important as the peace agreement itself. Instead of that, we became masters who excel in assigning blames on each other. You, Jibril, called it a vicious circle, and I fully agree. The question is to what extent we should look back rather than focus on the future. Is it really a question? I don't believe so. We need a compromise aiming at the reality of a better future, not merely achieving justice for past wrongs, etc. And time is running out for those like me who want to secure a Jewish and democratic state within recognized boundaries alongside a demilitarized Palestinian state. So you've heard the Palestinian perspective, let me give you very briefly my Zionist, Israeli, Jewish perspective. With a caveat though, because I will refrain today from referring to Iran and to the turmoil across the Arab world. Of course, regional concerns and threats are very relevant to any analysis that we are doing, and so are the opportunities. However, this presentation is dedicated to the Israeli-Palestinian arena because it seems to me that this Palestinian-Israeli conflict is at the very heart of the Arab-Israeli conflict altogether. And it is a major destabilizing factor. So, to sum this point up, the only viable solution is the two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians alike, putting an end to the occupation by delineating the borders around a democratic state with universal values of liberalism, pluralism, human rights, and the Jewish majority, alongside a neighboring, peaceful Palestinian state. Absent a resolution of the conflict, Israel faces growing international isolation, which will affect its society, its economy, and its security to an unacceptable extent. However, while this is very clear to me as an Israeli, it is very clear to me that this is an ultimate Israeli national interest. No real action is being taken to break the deadlock. Therefore, we urgently need to carve out a new approach to get us out of this dangerous impasse. And here is what I propose. Please don't jump immediately to contradict me. I propose a constructive unilateralism, a new paradigm that could make a difference. The situation on the ground could be transformed through a series of constructive unilateral steps, bringing gradual but tangible change. It is not conditioned upon the progress in negotiations. This is why these unilateral steps will promote a far more positive and hopeful atmosphere, enabling the renewal of the negotiations. The Israeli government should declare that it is willing to return to negotiations at any time. It should announce that it does not claim sovereignty on territories east of the security fence. And it should begin to prepare for the return of settlers who live east of the fence or outside of the settlement blocks. Israel should take the following unilateral steps. Firstly, freeze all settlement construction east of the security fence and in Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. On the other hand, construction in settlement blocks and in the Jewish neighborhoods in Jerusalem can continue. Secondly, enact a voluntary evacuation, absorption, and compensation law for settlers residing east of the fence so that they could relocate to within the Green Line and the settlement blocks, irrespective of the existence of a permanent agreement, while receiving proper compensation for their real estate. And finally, the Israeli government should prepare a national absorption plan for the settlers that will relocate into Israel proper, irrespective of an agreement. Once again, the plan will include components of urban, vocational, economic, security, and psychological and social planning. But it should be planned ahead of time, not wait until the very last minute of negotiations or no negotiations. By advancing this way, we create a two-state reality. Israel would be signaling a triple signal to the Israeli constituency, to the Palestinians, and to the international community. And what is this signal? It signals that it does not view the territories east of the fence within its permanent borders. Since there is no need for mutual agreement for unilateral steps, what I propose enables Israel to secure its long-term national interest, irrespective of the Palestinians' actions or lack of reciprocity. Until the conditions of the renewal of the negotiations are ripe, the parties will be encouraged to continue to make progress. Let us make it clear Unilateral actions, like rocket launching from Gaza or continuation of the settlement activity east of the fence, will be roundly condemned. This paradigm that I propose here leaves the door open for dialogue, affirms that the objective remains a two-state agreement, and that such agreement can be reached only through negotiations. My experience shows that steps with constructive nature do generate openness and support, and do help moving forward. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this conflict does not need more ripening. I wish that the United States would act like a global power and lead with a binding strategy of peacemaking. And once the negotiations are resumed, it seems required to change the formula of nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, which kind of was just the basis of our negotiations in Camp David, in Taba, in Annapolis, into a different formula, which I would call what has been agreed should be implemented. Such approach would provide the ground for a reasonable agreement on boundaries, and yes, 1967 borders with agreed modifications and land swaps. Of course, security, statehood for the Palestinians, and the economy, and subsequently, the negotiations could continue in a state-to-state fashion, perhaps even in a larger regional and international forum on Jerusalem, on refugees, and on other issues. To sum it up, I too am confident that we can reach peace, that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will eventually come to an end. My best judgment is that an agreement is possible, even if a partial or gradual agreement or a phased agreement. I believe that it is attainable and that peace is possible. We should all of us, Israelis, Palestinians, Jews and Arabs, should let go the ancient dreams and aspirations. And rather than sanctify death and ethos, we should look for a realistic future of life. Thank you.